Can you give me a countdown? That'd be great. Give me a 5, 4, and then I'll know what you're doing. Oh, we're on. I'll turn my volume up. I have this live feed up on ours. That way I can
Turn
see
my volume.
if I have this live feed up on ours. That way I can
Turn
see
my volume.
if
I have this live feed up on ours. That way
oh,
I can.
we looped. That was weird. Okay. All right. I think we're all good. Ian, you want to bring up a picture? I don't have any picture on there. Hey, there we are, folks. And if you get rid of that, there, awesomeness, awesomeness, awesomeness. Okay. Hi, everybody. I am Sifu Joel Ledlow. This is Evolution JKD. Thank you for joining us. Today, I am going to do what a lot of people don't do. I'm bringing in one of my students. Now, that being said, we're talking about destroying the ego, and this is something that my guest today, Steven Gilchrist, has really challenged me a lot of times as a student, challenged me as the instructor, as the authority, or whatever you want to say, to really come after answering some tough questions. And I really love that because it makes me dive deeper into the Jeet Kune Do, and it's something that Sifu Jerry always did with me. And I really want to push this out there. Like, so Steven is a student. He's not an instructor yet. One day we're going to get that. We're getting him into instructor level, but he's not. That being said, he's probably at a level of most of the so-called JKD instructors that you're going to find on YouTube. I would put him at the same level of what he can do physically and his level of understanding. But where he really sort of surpasses a lot of people is his insight as a person and how he takes Jeet Kune Do and the philosophy and applies it directly to his life. And that is really spectacular and why he's on here. And we're going to be sharing some insight from both of us and really just sort of going into it. If you don't know who I am, I'm Joel Ledlow. I trained with Jerry Poteet, who was a student under Bruce Lee in the Chinatown School. I also trained with a ton of other people. I started as a wrestler in high school, and then I got into dance when I was in university and did a lot of other movement when I was in university. And then I met a guy named Ed Monahan afterward. Well, actually, I was still at UCLA, and really introduced me to a lot of martial arts and great teachers and great people that I trained with. And I love martial arts. And I became an instructor underneath him, and through him met with Jerry Poteet, and then became a student under Jerry Poteet, and that just sort of elevated everything that I'd done with all these other really amazing martial artists. One of the big things that we always talked about was philosophy. We infused philosophy into everything we did, and one of those things was destroying the ego. And we'll talk about all this stuff into a little bit later. Some really cool stuff that we're going to be talking about destroying the ego and how it applies to us as men, how it applies to us as fathers, and how it applies to us as people of color or not color, and really sort of coming after the the race aspect and how we sort of can navigate from two uniquely different uh, sides of the same coin because we're both born and raised in Oklahoma. So it gives us a unique perspective as friends and people who train together to get to discuss topics a little bit more freely. And we're going to share some of that with you. And hopefully, whatever we come up with and whatever we share with you tonight will help you as a martial artist, as an individual, as a parent, whether women absolutely as mothers, being a better parent, as being just a better person, just in your community and doing all that. So that's sort of mine. I also I was a glorified bouncer in Hollywood for about 7 years. And then I moved to Oklahoma with my wife, where we had kids and opened a school there. And I've been running schools since 2010. Been teaching since way before then, but running my own schools, the Evolution Martial Arts schools, since 2010. That's where I met Steven. And then actually, Steven, were you at the school when I was there, or did you join the school after I moved here to Canada?
It was after you moved. I believe
That
I
is
joined
crazy because
in
it doesn't
20.
feel like, because you and I talk so much.
Yeah, we did.
And we have such a close relationship, and it's really remarkable. And I always think that we have, and I went back to Oklahoma. That school is closed now, but just due to circumstances of life and stuff. And but I'm glad to have kept contact with Stephen and some of the other students there. And I wish all those students the best. That's why I kept that school open for as long as I did. Was for all of them. But it's really, I have to think about that and go, really? Because I would come back and I would train and we would have these great conversations. It wasn't just in class, it was after class. And then, you'd blow up my messenger with something. And I was like, which is why we're here, because
Yeah.
Steven asks some really amazing questions. Steven, go ahead and introduce yourself and give everybody a little bit of a bio, who you are, and yeah, let's go from there.
Yeah, I'm born and raised in Oklahoma City. Have went to a college preparatory high school, went to OU, finished there, and just through a very variety of jobs, just began just sort of using my athletic ability and led me to teaching ballroom dance for about 3 years, which that movement allowed me to sort of move my way into martial arts training through Evolution JKD in 2015, I believe, and just got a chance to learn a lot of stuff under you and on the different instructors you brought in. Um, just working now, live in Atlanta, work now at a church, and yeah, got a family and just staying pretty busy, trying to stay away from COVID.
I think we all are. So Steve and I are both married. We both have two children each, and we have a boy and a girl, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah,
Mine, however, I have a boy and a girl. You have twins. You have
yeah,
twins. So Titus and Leah are twins, which puts his parent level up a level for me. That's my thought on that is he's a little bit up for me. Having twins, I think, is just a little bit more challenging. Ours, although my daughter, she pretty much takes care of everything. My son, he's a bit more like me. He's a bit more troublesome coming into that. But I think a lot of that is what we're going to get into with some of this stuff is talking about being and even even being a spouse. I wouldn't really put that into a thing, but I'm going to add that into it
yeah,
of being a better spouse, how we can apply Jeet Kune Do, the philosophies, and even the practice of it. We're not going to do a bilgy or a finger jab to our kid's eye or to our our spouse's eye. See, like, I'm going to win the argument. Um, but really getting into the thing, and I think the first thing is a lot of people out there only look at martial arts as how they can win a fight. I'm gonna share. Oops, Stephen, I think I lost you for a second, or
I'm
my
here.
feed lost you. Oh, there you're back.
Yeah,
Okay, I don't know if they lost on the feed or not. Oh, yeah, I lost on the feed. So, two things on this. Number one, a lot of martial arts schools and teachers out there only look at the fight. When reality is a fight isn't going to happen very often, especially if you do this thing that we're talking about, destroying the ego. You can
mhm,
avoid so many physical altercations just by destroying your own ego. And that's what Bruce was getting into. And it's the truth that we're looking at. And the second part is, and not just Jeet Kune Do, really fantastic martial artists that I know personally and friends of mine who speak about their instructors, they all do that. They're really great martial artists out there, whatever line of martial arts they're doing, they all do the same thing. It's
mhm,
about how do you make your life better
yeah,
outside of punching and kicking or choking or throwing or whatever, of physically subduing or destroying an individual. How do you take your martial arts and apply it to your life? And that's what we're talking about here. The first step is to destroy your ego. And what the hell does that mean? Stephen, why don't you come in and give your insight into it as to what does that mean to you as a person, as a father, as a husband, as a person in your community, as a leader in your community, and just as a student of the world?
Yeah, so my biggest and most important part of this story really started from the very beginning. So coming in and learning Jeet Kune Do, and everyone's idolizing Bruce, and you see Bruce on my shirt. And after going through a few drills, there was a statement made that just rocked my world. And that statement was, "Hey, if you can avoid a fight, you won." And I'll never forget thinking, because I grew up in Oklahoma City where you had to win the fight to win. And here it is, my instructor saying, if you can avoid the fight, you won. And it just, there wasn't much discussion afterwards, but I think that's what led me to asking you questions and sending you Facebook messages like, what does that mean? What does that look like? What about this here? What about that here? And it struck me that if you're thinking positively, if you're considering everybody going through life ups and downs, whatever the case may be, you can actually do more good than you can do damage. So the martial arts that you teach and that I learned is not just to go out and beat people up and be, it man or whatever in these movies. It really is to use for life. So
Absolutely.
learning how to um, see some trouble and then having the wisdom to turn around and walk away from it instead of thinking, well, hey, I got some tools, I've been training for a year or so, let's go. That's not wise.
There's a lot of people who like to think that way, and I'm going to say I was probably guilty of that myself. Being a young guy in LA at the time, I learned a lot of stuff, but I was pretty, was a battling between like wanting to kick the crap out of somebody and use my martial arts that I've learned, but also just being a nice guy and not wanting to do that. And then I got into security. There's a couple of guys at Combative Arts Academy where I was training at the time, and they were like, "Hey, Joel, you should come in and do this." And I was like, "What do I know? Like, I can't do this stuff. Like, I'm not that good." They're like, "Dude, you're higher ranked than we are. You know way more than we do, and we're high level in what we do." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I came in, and they were absolutely right. I did know a lot, and a lot of it had to do with problem solving. And one of the reasons I say glorified bouncers because I got paid a crap load of money to come in and run security teams for various places in throughout the LA area. And one of the things that really helped me out was taking me out of the equation. A lot of bouncers, you always see in the movies, you always hear about a story about you go someplace and a bouncer beats the living crap out of somebody. That's because they're scared, because it became about me as the bouncer against you as the person causing problems. Instead of, and where I got a lot of, where I was very successful and was very sought after by a lot of people, was someone would have a problem and then I would try to solve that problem. And it wasn't about me being tougher than them, it was about me solving the problem, and that was taking me out of it, and that's the first step in destroying your ego. This confrontation is not about me. Take me out of it. Take my wants and needs out of it, and look at the problem a little bit more clearly. Look at it without the distortion of my own wants and desires, and you start to destroy the ego. The ego is the self, and you take yourself out of that problem, and then you just look at the problem, and then you're like, well, this person is upset about X, Y, or Z, and you go, oh, I can help you, and now you're solving the problem, which is what 99% of us want, is someone to help us solve a problem. I have a problem and you're going to be solving it with me. It's like, wait a second, I can't be upset with you because you're on my side.
Yeah.
And it's not me against you, it's the two of us against this issue, and we're both working to resolve it. And everybody, like I said, 99% of us want to resolve an issue, especially if you're in a fight, a physical altercation. You might get upset about something, but something led you into that physical altercation. And for most people, once you get into a physical altercation, your first thought is, how do I get out of it? And that's where I found a lot of success, was putting myself as an ally to someone else.
Mm.
Of, whoa, what's going on? Oh, it's over there. Let me figure it out. I'll help you out. Okay, let me figure it out. So parties A and parties B had a conflict, and I would push them to the side and I would take care. It's not, it didn't always work out that way. And sometimes I have to lay hands on somebody and apply skill and separate them. forcefully, but wasn't for want of trying. And I always went back and reflected, what could I have done better? What could I
Mm,
have done better? And it began this cycle of problem solving, which I then, and I'm gonna take this into relationship. We didn't originally talk about doing this, but our spouses. And meeting my wife, Catherine, I had such a different perspective. And I'm going to share something that was as a that Sifu Jerry actually said to my wife right before we moved to Oklahoma from Los Angeles, which we were doing a seminar and I was training and I was teaching over there, and she's sitting in the back and she's I don't know 6 7 months pregnant with Elliot, and he's sitting down at the time because his health wasn't super great at the time, but he was sitting down and I'm over here teaching and some other people over here teaching, and he turns back to my wife and he says, Joel, I had a lot of anger, and I've seen a lot of that anger disappear over the last year, and I think that's been because of you. I
mm.
think you are a huge part of that. And she said it was like the nicest thing that anyone could have said, just the way he put it. And I would agree with that, that because I had somebody who was there, not that we didn't have problems, not that we didn't have differences, in LA sort of just makes them worse, I feel. Um, but we got into problem solving. We would problem solve, like, well, what is this? And then we would solve a problem. And like, if you haven't checked out my bio by this point, please do so. But my wife, which is fast forwarding to 2013, and my wife was diagnosed with brain cancer. Well, that's a big reason why we're in Canada, is because her family is from here, and we moved closer to her family, so for the support network. um, that's a lot of like dealing with the situation and destroying your ego. And like, I could have wallowed in me, 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 me. Not that I don't still sometimes do that, but was able to do that. And, still to this day, we, like any couple, we have confrontation, and, um, but we're pretty good of figuring out what the problem is, and then figuring out why it's hurtful to me or hurtful to her, and then going through there and dealing with it and coming through. But I would not have been able to talk to my wife, you know and be in a relationship with Catherine, if I weren't able to do this, because it would have been so much. And I know so many of my friends who were in LA who couldn't break down a wall. I remember I had a wall, figurative wall up to protect myself. And I remember like, wow, I need to knock that thing down if I'm ever going to go out and meet somebody. And literally after having this conversation with myself, I met my wife,
Mm.
and it was coming. And what about you and Ebony? Like, how did the two of you meet? I always
Yeah,
think it's ballroom dancing, but it's not. You didn't meet her there.
it's
I'm always
not.
like, that would be so amazing if you just swept her off of her feet. But
Yeah, we met at OU, got married a few years after we graduated. The funny thing is, so being married and sort of learning how to do this thing, and then coming into JKD, yeah, that's hard to want to crush your ego and say, "Oh, well, let me think more about the other person before myself." Right? That's pretty hard to do when you kind of have a track record of doing it your own way. And then
yeah,
you
you get to
add
be a
in,
single young guy or girl, and you're
yeah,
a single person, and it's all like, you're not at home with your parents anymore. You're like, it's all about me and
right.
whatever I want to do. And suddenly you have somebody else. And I think that's a really great, 'tis the season of giving. And how do you give to the other person? I think you hit the nail with that one.
And
I
then you
keep
add
going, keep
in
going.
kids, right? So in 2013, we have our twins, and it is major sacrifice from the day that we leave the hospital, right? I'm sacrificing sleep. I'm sacrificing a lot just to try to be a functional parent and employee. And then
I totally agree with you. I
and then
totally agree with you.
to add another twist to it, CIFA, I don't know if you remember this, but whenever I joined your school, I was really on the heels of losing my mom. So in 2015, I lost three people in my family, and you know,
Oh,
like
yeah.
I've done a lot of traveling back and forth from Atlanta to
Yeah.
Oklahoma City for funerals. Well, I was just on the hill of losing her with a lot of anger, a lot of sadness, and then learning this martial art, and I'm happy, right? I'm enjoying it. I'm coming 3 or 4 times a week, and then it's just sort of this, you need to walk away from the fight. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. Like
Yeah.
that's not
Oh,
fun, right? I got some things I need to deal with, and it was sort of like, well, deal with them in here in class. Like channel
yeah.
all of that, use all that emotion, get it all out. And when you leave this classroom, after we bow out, you go out there and you be a better human than you were before you came in. That's no, that was
Or
really
or
the
I'd say
huge
not a
factor.
better I would say be the best version of yourself, because sometimes we all carry negativity. We all have that
Yeah,
negativity, and I found this with my teachers and with my experience, whether it was with Ed or with Sifu Jerry or with one of my other great, amazing instructors, is I was allowed to come in and dump it all on the floor, put it all into the mitts. And I also gotta say, a lot of really amazing training partners allowed me to do that and be there for me when I was having a rough day. And some days it was just me and a heavy bag, and just get it all out. And
yeah,
then you're washing away that negativity, you're expelling it. And I would say it gives you a direction to put that violence and negativity, because we're going to have it. You're going to have it. I think it's a bit crazy to say that you won't, but it gives you a place to put it that's not going to be detrimental to yourself, to your family, to your social network. You're going to be able to do that, and then you can go back to problem solving.
mhm,
And I totally agree with you with the parents. So in my perspective, did two things. One, so with Catherine, yeah, okay, great. And then when she was pregnant, I was still bouncing, and it changed my perspective. I was like, okay, like, wait a minute, I don't get paid for that. I don't need to prove how tough I am to you. I get paid so that you don't wreck the place and hurt the staff, and then don't hurt the patrons. But if I can get you out the door and then I can go home, I'm okay.
yeah,
And then we moved and I opened up the school, and Elliot was born just a couple of like 2 weeks later. Not even. And wow, that was a big one for me, which was the other side of that. I would I would destroy anything for him.
yeah, oh yeah,
And it's a weird thing. So you were talking about emotional content. Until you're a parent, I don't think you understand emotional content. It's like, yeah, I'm tough and all that. I'm a young, tough guy. Oh, wait a minute. I've got another half of me. Wow, I'm gonna really protect that person. I would lay it out there. When you have a little baby, suddenly it's like, wait a second, I'm gonna cash a check. And people are like, and I've said this many times, people are like, you didn't fill out the amount. That's fine. It's fine. Just empty the account. I don't even care at this point,
yeah,
which makes you really put into perspective what you're willing to fight for and destroying your ego of. And for me it was a really big thing of coming from a place where I had to physically apply myself to volatile situations, and then I'm teaching little kids and I'm teaching teenagers and I'm teaching adults, and I've got my own kids at home, and it's like, oh well, you come back in now, Steven. I think you're still there.
yeah,
um yeah, okay, you're still good. Just a little video lag, it's fine. Welcome to the world of technology. Of how do I apply myself
mm,
with this stuff, and how do I get rid of my negativity? And I came from all this place of, put all this on there. What's worth it? What's worth me sacrificing all of this? My wife and my child? Whoa, I'll burn everything for them. But I'll also, as you're talking about, walk away from almost everything, because it's not about my ego anymore. It's
mhm,
like, well, what's my wife going to do if I'm in jail? Because my pride was so much. My ego needed me to prove to a perfect stranger,
yeah,
a stranger is more important than my wife. A stranger is more important than my child. No, that's your ego, your pride. That's you are putting yourself above those other people.
Yeah.
And worse, it's putting the negative self above the positive self, because who I am with my wife and who I am with my children is way better than who I am without them. And in that negative stuff, and we're all negative, and I absolutely have negative aspects to me, and get caught in that loop just like everybody else does. At least I'm hoping everybody else does. I'm not alone in this one, but of 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 coming through and not wanting to be the bad version of me. I could be a really crappy version of me, but I want to try to be the best version of me. And that's where we get rid of that negative stuff. So, not being a better you, but being the best version of yourself,
Yeah.
being fulfilling. And I think this is one of the other things for my wife. How can I fulfill my potential as not as a martial artist,
Mhm.
but as a spouse and as a father and as a person, as a friend, as a whatever you want to be? How can I do that? And so I think destroying ego for me helps me not be the best, but be the best version of me that I can be, and
Mhm.
depending on how well I do it. um and I gotta say, for me, I had one kid. I remember, and you're got twins, dude. So, folks, if you don't have kids, I'm gonna tell you, I remember coming in. Elliot was just we were just talking about this. Uh, we had an exercise ball and a bounce on this exercise ball. And I remember coming in from teaching, and Elliot was little, and Catherine had been nursing, and he was like he nursed every 2 hours, and she literally was like, "Here." And I grabbed him up and I got on that bouncy ball and I started bouncing, and she went into the bedroom, closed the door to go to sleep. And that's the thing, is like, we have all these wants and needs, and all of a sudden your wife is like giving of herself so much. And you're
Yeah.
like, what about me? Oh, wow. Yeah. I
Yeah.
haven't done anything. I'm going to come over here and crush my spine bouncing our child while my wife gets a little bit of sleep. I got 6, 7 hours of sleep last night, but she got like three, and it was broken up.
Yeah.
So it really started changing for me of kind of what I'm going through or what I'm dealing with, and doing that. And then when my wife was diagnosed, I was there, and it was like, it's very easy going to me, but wow, I was like, hey, my job's pretty friggin' easy. Like, I'm a support network. Like, what you got? Let's go. And then it was easy for me to dump that off
Mm.
into other things. So what about with twins? How do you have to destroy your ego with twins?
It's really hard. But I think the main thing you have to do is realize that though they are twins, and in this case they are fraternal, not identical, they have different needs. And so I can't come with this sort of cookie cutter approach. And one wants to hold me, one wants me to hold them, or wants to move around or walk or do whatever. And now, my son's like, hey, play this with me. My daughter's like, well, sit here while I play with you. And so it's still like this constant sort of tug of war. But you know what? One thing I learned then, and you and I discussed heavily over and over again, was is looking at something and not having this sort of um, negative outlook where you are thinking selfishly, but you're actually thinking, okay, how can I problem solve? And in this case, you have two people tugging on you for your time. What is it that I'm supposed to do? And then how can I sort of meet this need here, meet that need there, and going back to that part of writing that check. I remember just you and I having maybe like a 2-day conversation on Facebook, and just thinking, I'm just throwing out questions left and right, and you're answering all of them. Like I'm throwing softballs, I'm
No,
throwing
I gotta
any.
I gotta put in there. Steven would throw out some questions, and some of them I'm like, yeah, yeah, I got it. And then he'd
Yeah,
throw out some questions, and I was like, give me a minute. Like,
yeah,
I'm not just brushing you off. Like, give me a minute to wrap my head around this one and give you a real response to it.
yeah,
So keep going, keep going.
yeah. And one was just like, hey, as the father, as the provider, the protector, you do everything and all things you can to make sure you get home to them and that they're safe. And I
I
just remember like feeling that weight, and it wasn't even a burden. It was like it was a privilege. Like when I
Yeah.
began to see it that way, it was really a privilege, a great thing. And so I've just sort of taken steps left and right, as they've gotten older and we moved from OKC to Atlanta. It's just, hey, whatever it takes to get home, that's what I'll do because
And
getting home
I
is more
think that
important.
goes into, something I put a note down here. We're talking about manhood. You and I have talked about this as being men,
Yeah,
and that expectation that people putting you in a box of what you have to do, and then you going, "Yeah, that box doesn't fit into what me and my family needs, and I'm gonna destroy that box." So it's not letting someone else put that expectation on you and putting your and sometimes, putting your own expectation as what it means to be a man. "I'm gonna
yeah,
be a man, I'm gonna do this." Well, a man also changes diapers and takes care of your kids and is nurturing and has to go do this or that and pick up this from the store or do that with the kids. And can you be strong enough and tough enough to do that?
yeah,
And I think a lot of that is destroying the box that society puts you in and having the strength to realize that the problem isn't with you. The problem is someone else is assigning something to you, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more later. Um, so manhood and being a spouse, and what does that mean to be a spouse? And for me, and I think all my discussions with you and Ebony, you're the same as Catherine and I. It's a mutual, and there's some sort of stereotypical where like I'm the man and you're subservient to me, and then the people still have that, or vice versa, where the woman is dominant and the man is not. But I have a mutual with my wife, and we're equals in that, and very different. And it's going to go into something that you're talking about with kids. Sometimes I want to solve a problem with one of our kids
mhm,
and I don't have the tools. It's sort of like I want to punch somebody, but punches don't work on them. I need to go into kicks on them, or I got to do into some can't counter grappling or something like that. I've got to
yeah,
do something different. I've got to use the right tool for that. And then as being an equal and being two halves of one side, sometimes I have to go, I'm not the right parent for this problem. And that's tough for me. That one's tough because I'm like, "Ah, okay, I'm gonna be over here. You take care of this, and I'm gonna go deal with my own ego and go over here and take care of that while you actually problem solve." And I find for me that one's pretty tough to do, because I'm problem solver. That's me. It's just I'm a fix it guy. My wife gets really upset with me sometimes because she'll say something. I'm like, "Well, we could do this and this and this." She goes, "No, I don't actually want to hear what your answers are. I don't need you to fix something. I'm just telling you." I was like, "Do you want me to fix it?" And that's just me. So if there's a problem, I always want to fix it, and it's
yeah,
sometimes I'm not the fix it guy,
yeah,
and or the fix it person or the fix it parent, and I have to go, okay, you fix it.
mhm,
Um, so I find that, and what you're saying with twins, it's just got to amplify. Mine are a little bit different in age, so I feel as though I've gotten a little bit of. I got Elliot for a little bit, and then I got Quinn for a little bit, my daughter. But yeah, it's trying to get it through there. What else we got in here? So fatherhood's I wanted to put Steve and I got a note in here, so I got some few notes in here, but
I
I
love
always learn from talking to you. What's something else that you want to share about manhood or fatherhood? And we're gonna jump into the heavier stuff in just a
it.
second. We're not gonna go too deep, folks, but we'll go into a little bit because we're two sides of the same coin of guys being raised in Oklahoma. But if you haven't liked the channel, please do so. Please subscribe for more content. And let me know. You can always ask questions in the comment section if you're not watching it live. See if we've got any live on here. I don't think I do. Um, but yeah, Steven, go ahead and go.
Yeah, so manhood. um, yeah, I share that same trait of wanting to fix things. But the one thing that I was taught and I've tried to use is, hey, reach out to somebody who has gone through what you've gone through and learn from them. And so I think it's another reason why you and I have had a running dialogue for several years. And to just even add some perspective that will help tie into the next segment, uh, living here in Atlanta from 2017 to the present, um, I came to a more southern state. I came to a more historical state. Um, and I was here, after a certain presidency and different things happened. And so what I had to learn is Oklahoma is very much not like Georgia. And the way that things happen here are different. And here's how you can get along. Here's how you can help people relax. Here's how you can humble yourself. Here's how you can destroy your ego. And all of that is manly, right? There is no sense of, oh, you're being a wuss because you don't pop somebody in the mouth because they say
Yeah.
something crazy. No, it is in the sense of, I'm actually going to respect you, even though you're not respecting yourself, right? I'm going to do this because that's probably the best thing for everybody right now, instead of me just trying to show off and
Is
um
it worth it? I think that's what is it worth it to have that conflict with somebody? Is this a fight worth fighting? And that goes to with anybody, whether it's a physical fight or a fight for with your kids or a fight with your spouse. Is it a fight that deserves? We talked about fighting for your kids. If someone's going to endanger my kids,
yeah,
it's not the same thing as like, you know, another kid calls my kid a goofball or says you're a big dum dum. I'm being really light on the profanities there, but what if, some kid calls my kid a name
yeah,
and I run over and pop him in the face? I'm probably gonna win the fight against 11-year-old or an 8-year-old. Just gonna say, probably should put some money on me. But then there's consequences. And is that a fight worth it? Is it a fight? Should I talk to that person? I run into that a lot where there's things that maybe upset me about I disagree with that person. I disagree strongly. But is it a fight worth fighting? Does it deserve my all out commitment to
yeah,
that? And that's something you and I have talked about.
right,
And then going with what it applies to my children, being wrong and sometimes going, you know what? Hey, sorry, daddy was wrong. I made a mistake. And really destroying my ego and seeing how, because I want my kids to be better than me. I want them to be the best that they can be.
of
And I
course,
want them to have the fullness of what I have. And then plus everything I do is to give them all that I have, but also afford them better opportunities than I have had, and build that positive path. But one of the things I found is being wrong. And I think in any altercation, coming into it, in that's part of the destroying the ego
yeah,
of you can be wrong. It's okay to be wrong and acknowledge, like, wow, you know what? You're right. I was wrong on that. I'm so sorry. I apologize for that. Holy crap. You know how many times you can stop a fight by just being like, ooh, oh, I'm so sorry. That was my fault. I apologize.
yeah,
People think about this, folks. I use this one because this one's really big for me on both sides. And I try to be for both sides. Driving. We all drive, right?
mhm,
Who's done something and you've screwed up as a driver and you're like, oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. That one was me. Sorry. The wave, right? You're like, oh crap, that was me. You're like admitting, like, I was the guilty party. I'm so sorry. And how many of us have seen somebody else do that? You're like, what the heck is wrong with you? You sorry, bleep, 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 bleep. And then they do the wave, and you're like, oh,
oh,
okay. All right, you're cool.
right,
Right? Well, at least for me, I'm very forgiving on that one. I'm like, what is wrong with it? Oh, they waved. Okay, all right, okay, cool.
yeah,
Right, and it's just an acknowledgement that you could do it. We got a little bit stuff in here I want to go into quickly. So one of the Tomoko, I'm not gonna say the whole thing, but in Buddhism they have this concept called anatta, which means no self, which is to say that the ego does not exist except as an idea. It has no substance or form outside of the idea. That's where a lot of this comes from. So Bruce would study a lot of Taoism, a lot of Buddhism, and you see that in the Eastern. And he was really not trying to create a lot of new stuff, but sharing the wisdom of the East, which was thousands of years old. with the modern self of the. Oh, my wife is saying hi to me. The modern self of the science of the West, and he's trying to put those two together. And he tried a lot, and that's where a lot of his sayings are. And it wasn't him trying to say, "Hey, I know this. This is my words." It was him sharing that wisdom. And I think any wisdom that you can share is really great. And it's this whole idea. That's where destroying the ego comes from.
Yeah.
Also, put in self control is a stronger trait than physical display. Yeah, if you can control yourself. I would agree with that personally. My ego says, you know, I could fight. It's not even a, can I win every fight? No, I'm not going to make that claim. That's stupid. But I can fight. I have the physical wherewithal and can do it. It's been proven. Um, but do I need to? Like that physical restraint is. How do I justify doing it? Like, do I
Right.
do it just to feed into my own ego? Do I beat the crap out of you just to make myself feel better?
Mm.
That person might go home thinking they could beat me up, and I know they're absolutely wrong. The chances of them beating me are about 1%. They don't realize that, but why do I need to prove that to them?
Mm.
The stereotype is you gotta show them you're who's boss. Why? They're
Right.
not important to me. I gotta get home from my wife and kids.
Yeah.
You know how mad my wife is gonna be? Do you like for me, facing another person, that's easy. Facing my kids and telling them that somebody else was more important than them and explaining like I got into a fight with a stranger who is
Mhm.
not important to our family about something really stupid just to prove myself to them. That's a bit tough for me to do. That's a bit of a challenging one for me to do.
Mhm.
Anything that you want to add? Actually, we're gonna go into that. I'm gonna segue that one into it. And Stephen, I'm gonna let you pick up the ball in this one.
Okay.
And so Stephen had sent me a message, and this is one of those ones where I was like, "Hang on, buddy, I like give me a second to do it." And it was destroying the ego of him dealing with the fact that he's a black man, and he was in a predominantly white setting, and was forced to deal with other people's ego and um and having to battle as a person of
Mhm.
color dealing unfortunately dealing with people who look a lot like me, and hopefully not that I act like that way, but dealing with that and really coming through and understanding the why of it. And the only thing I was really doing was just being sort of there on as a cheering team and saying, well, here's the perspective. And I think a lot of people don't put their egos aside, and that's how the institutionalism stays with it of race and discrimination and prejudice. And a lot of people don't think um really don't think of themselves as racist, and they don't understand there's been a lot of public stuff coming out recently, and I've really had to look where I came up and sort of what the social norms were, being raised in Oklahoma as a white male, and sort of the privilege associated with that. And yeah, you're like, "Oh, Joel, you were a poor kid and you didn't really have a whole lot and X, Y, and Z." Yeah, but I had a lot of doors open up to me, and probably a lot of things that were allowed to slide because I was a white kid. And even being male versus female, like it's a lot where you don't realize it.
Mhm.
Um, and I find when I'm in a community that is much more mixed, that everybody is much more accepting. But in any community, not every community, I won't say every community, but a lot of times you find a community that is dominantly one race, then it tends to be less um, accepting of somebody who is different because you
Mm.
don't fit the norm. Whereas everybody's different, everybody's like, ah, it's like Sesame Street. Nobody cares at that point. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, you show up. I don't even care who you are. But Stephen, I'm gonna let you take the ball on this one with um, understand the ego of others so that you can intercept their hate or their prejudice,
Mhm.
um, and how you have set your own ego aside in that, and how anything you want to share with their story or just insight that you might have into there. Go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, so that particular story was very much tied to my employment, and it was just a lot of people, a lot of men in this case, were very condescending, and doing things that flare up the male ego, especially. And
Hmm.
I was reaching out to you and also to Ian as well, and just getting some insight, like, hey, what do you guys think? Because this is what I feel, and you and I have always had this relationship where I can be completely 100% honest. Um, and I think what I took away from our conversation was, hey, you flexing, your martial arts skill one time is not going to change how he thinks. And in
Mm-mm.
actuality, it might make things worse. So finding a way to intercept his hatred with uh, a different spin, a different look on things, or finding a way to kind of shut down that opportunity to ramp up uh,
Hmm.
into some of the little struggle that can happen
and,
between
and
men.
not justify. Don't give them a means to justify their hate and their prejudice.
Right, right. And then the biggest thing was, hey, if he touches you, and it's one of those deals where your life is being threatened, well, straight blast away and have
Yeah.
fun. But unless he touches you, he's just using words, and there are always ways to intercept words. So I was able to deal with that and to deal with him and a few other guys in some helpful ways. And it was humbling the entire time because I knew in my mind, like you were given in this hypothetical, I can whip this guy
Yep.
any day of the week, 2 times on Sunday, I can whip him easy. But again, to to say, "Hey, I beat you up," doesn't change the issue, doesn't change the problem I was
Yeah.
having.
That's
So,
old movie. That's old movie ego stuff of like, oh,
yeah,
let's go out and fight. Let's take it behind the school. Or let's go out there and that was the who was a tougher guy. But that's not the real world for us.
right. And then taking this thing that we learned in JKD about interception and kinetic energy. So, not giving him, like you said, that energy to justify his hatred
Mhm.
really robbed him of his ability to be hateful most of the times, and then just kind of left me alone, which is what I wanted in the beginning,
Yeah.
right? So here I am, like, man, I didn't know you could actually use this in life, especially in something as volatile as race and racism and prejudice. But you can. I'm not in jail. This guy and I haven't, you know, made things really, really bad. We're actually fine now. I'm understanding of him and leery of him, but I know how to deal with this in a much healthier way than, hey, I'm in jail. Need somebody to come and bail me out.
Yeah. I think another thing that we talked about a little bit was the idea of racism, and it goes a little bit bigger. How can you fight today and then still be okay as a man, okay as a husband, okay as a father, okay as a member of your community, but then ultimately fight that fight in a way that you can win. Because like you said, if you fight it in that way, the establishment is, well, you're justifying everything I just said because I have a preconceived notion about what you should be and how you should act, and then you acted that way.
Yeah.
I was right. And I'm
Uh-huh.
going to tell everybody. And even when they lose a fight, even if you do beat them up, you've put yourself into the box that someone else has created. And when you step outside of that box, you
Mhm.
destroy what that preconceived notion is.
Yeah.
And then you fight them. And I think one of the things we talked about was not going as a black man or a white man or a whatever, polka dot colored man, but as a human, and really coming back into that of, wow, I can be human and I can identify with you as a father, as a man, as a husband, as a father, as a human. You close your eyes, we're the same.
Mhm.
And reaching out to them and doing that. And you know what? You're not going to do that with everybody. And it's just what like I said with my kids, sometimes you're not the tool to change their mind.
Mhm.
recognizing that you're not going to be the tool, or recognizing that I'm not going to be a tool, and doing it, and realizing that there's certain things that sometimes, sometimes I can speak out because I'm a white man. I can speak out on this issue to people, and call people out. There you go. Sorry.
Yeah.
What are you going to say? "Well, I'm a white guy. I can say the same thing because you're a white guy. I'm a white guy. I can." There you go. But there's other things that I can't speak out on because I don't have that perspective. I can only be an ally, and hopefully I can be a better ally each day of doing that. Um, I think we're pretty good. The wife and kids are rumbling around. We were over at my in-laws, and we were there earlier. I had to come back and do some shoveling. We got snow today, a lot more snow.
Oh no.
We had some really cool things. And Stephen, thank you. I'd like to tell everybody, uh, one of the things that I always love doing is helping other students gain from this thing that we do, and this thing called Jeet Kune Do, and grow from it. But understand that I grow just as much as my students do, and that's why Stephen is on here. He is skilled in his own right, physical in the physical aspect, but in the philosophical aspect, he's a super champion of being able to apply it and understand it and absorbing it and making it uniquely his own, not doing up some made up stuff. But this is the application we're talking about. This is the application that Bruce Lee was actually talking about. This is the application that Jerry Petit was talking about. And this is the application that I aspire towards myself, is applying it to your daily life and applying it to your spouse, to your children, to your community, as a small community or as a larger community,
Yeah.
whatever that might mean to you. Stephen, any last words from you, my friend?
um, I I do want to leave our viewers with this. Um, JKD is not meant to puff up. Is actually meant to make you better. There are there are good ways out here. I believe I've been following Seafood Joe for 6 years plus. I've benefited tremendously from it. But I've been able to walk away and sort of make JKD my own through his help. And I would encourage anyone who is training or desires to train in this art to keep that perspective. You can and you will become a better person as well as a martial artist if you use this in the proper way.
I totally agree. It's one of the things we're doing with this channel is just bringing the positivity of Jeet Kune Do as it was passed down to me, but also as it's being ignited and carried on by the next generation. So it's not just going to stop and die with me. I want to pass it on, and Stephen is part of that process of passing it on. And it seems to be alive and well in you, my friend. So for everybody, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this great talk that we've had. And look for me in the next time. And if you like this, hit the like, subscribe for more stuff, and let me know if you'd like to have Stephen back, or if you have questions that you'd like to discuss. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.